A former soldier of the American Army in search of a new life goes to Japan and becomes a participant in the events, in which the old world collides with the new. Despite the war, he finds inner peace and comprehends what the honor of a real warrior means. This is the movie The Last Samurai. Nathan Algren, a former cavalry captain, struggles with memories of the past. He participated in punitive operations against the Indians, and now he can't forget what he did. After the army, he got drunk and earns money by participating in advertising displays of weapons, talking about rifles, and making demonstration shots in a drunken state. He doesn't enjoy this job, but he doesn't have another one. After another advertising show, his former subordinate, Sergeant Gent, tells him the news. Colonel Bagley advised Algren to the advisor to the Emperor of Japan, Mr. Amura. At the meeting, Algren defiantly ignores Bagley's outstretched hand, because he still cannot forgive him for the massacre staged against the Shen tribe. From Cupid, he learns that his experience is needed to suppress a samurai uprising led by Katsumoto, the emperor's former mentor, who opposes the growing influence of the West on the country. In July 1876, Nathan sets out, realizing that he must again take part in the murder of another rebellious tribe. At the port of Yokohama, they are met by translator Simon Graham, who accompanies the delegation to an audience with Emperor Meiji, during which the monarch expresses gratitude for helping to modernize the army. From the very beginning, Algren understands that the recruits with whom he has to work are simple peasants, far from military affairs. They have no discipline, no training, and they even hold weapons in their hands for the first time. The army is led by General Hashigawa, a former samurai who is well acquainted with Katsumoto. From him, Algren learns that the rebels fundamentally refuse modern weapons and, out of respect for their traditions, continue to fight the old-fashioned way. Only a few days pass, and Amura demands that the army march immediately, as Katsumoto continues to attack trains. Algren declares that the soldiers are not ready for a real fight yet, and to prove it, orders one of the recruits to shoot himself. He hardly loads the weapon and in the end does not even hit. But this scene doesn't make the right impression. Bagley and Amura are confident that technical superiority will ensure their victory and are ordered to march the next morning. A few days pass, and the detachments begin to prepare for battle with the samurai who took refuge in the forest. The captain struggles to get at least some order out of the recruits and forces them to take the right positions. When Bagley offers him to move to the rear, reminding him that he is not obliged to participate in the battle, Nathan refuses, as someone has to lead the recruits. Gent also stays, unwilling to abandon his commander. When the samurai battle cry is heard over the forest, fear engulfs the ranks. With trembling hands, the soldiers barely cope with weapons. Suddenly, samurai dressed in heavy armor burst out of the thicket, and the soldiers, panicking, start shooting without a command, opening a random fire that does not cause any damage to the attackers. The samurai are rapidly crashing into the formation, and the battle turns into the destruction of the regular army. The detachments are completely demoralized, and in a matter of minutes, the ranks collapse under the onslaught of experienced warriors. Algren enters the fight and soon witnesses one of the samurai killing Gent. Realizing that he is doomed, he decides not to give up without a fight and continues to fight until he falls exhausted to the ground. Even in this state, he finds the strength to kill another opponent, and his fortitude and courage impress Katsumoto, who orders not to kill the captain. Already sitting on a horse, Algren notices how Katsumoto helps General Hashigawa to pass away with honor. The captain is captured, and he is brought to the village of Katsumit's son on the Butada, and a woman named Taka takes care of him. While Algren recovers from his wounds, Katsumoto reads his notes about the war with the Indians, and Taka refuses alcohol to the prisoner. After a few weeks without a drink, Algren gradually comes to his senses. For the first time in a long time, clarity of mind returns to him. Finally, he finds the strength to leave the house, and during one of his walks, he is brought to Katsumoto. The captain does not understand why he was treated differently than the general, and Katsumoto explains that Nathan is not a samurai, and it would not be an honor to kill him like Hashigawa. At the same time, the captain learns that Taka is Katsumoto's sister and the widow of the samurai he killed. One day, Algron witnesses the boys playing with wooden swords and decides to join them. But a passing Yuji, who insisted from the very beginning that the foreigner be killed, perceives the prisoner's participation in the game as an insult and decides to teach him a lesson. In a duel where Nathan does not know the techniques and cannot defend himself, Yuji takes out all the accumulated anger. However, despite the hail of blows, the captain stubbornly continues to rise to his feet, forcing the enemy to act on the verge of what is permissible. After all, Katsumoto made it clear that you can't kill an American. From day to day, Algron observes the life of the samurai and is increasingly amazed by their discipline, respect for traditions, and the desire to perfect everything they undertake. Gradually, he begins to join their culture and way of life, getting closer to the Taki family. Nathan increasingly takes part in sword training, trying to master the art of combat, and gradually his movement becomes more confident. He learns the language, is interested in everyday life, and respects the way the life of the village is arranged. One day, he finds the strength to apologize to Katsumoto's sister for killing her husband. She accepts his apology, saying that they both did their duty, and her husband fell with a sword in his hands, as befits Murai. So weeks pass. The days are filled with workouts, walks, and long conversations with Katsumoto. Soon winter turns to spring, and in his notes Algron admits that for the first time in a long time, he began to sleep peacefully, and dreams about the past no longer torment him. He continues to improve his sword skills, and soon amazes others by fighting on equal terms with Yuji. One evening, assassins attack the village in order to eliminate Katsumoto, but the attempt to do so fails unnoticed, and the two groups engage in battle. Nathan also takes part in the battle, and, back to back, with Katsumoto repels the attack. After the incident, the rebel leader confesses to Nathan that when he took his notes, the captain was his enemy. But now everything has changed. Tomorrow they will enter Tokyo, and Algron will be able to dispose of his freedom again. With a heavy heart, Nathan says goodbye to such a person, realizing that he may never see her again, and sets off with Katsumoto's squad. The arrival of the samurai in the city causes panic, and despite the attempts of the authorities to limit their influence, the people involuntarily bow before them, and Katsumoto releases the captain. The emperor's army now looks completely different because it received modern weapons from the United States, in exchange for certain trade concessions. At a meeting with the emperor, Katsumoto tries to convince him that his confidants are only using his authority to enrich themselves by dragging Japan into a Western culture alien to her. Amura, meeting with Nathan, notices that he no longer drinks and suggests that he start training soldiers again. But Algron refuses, and after his departure, the advisor orders the captain to be eliminated if he tries to approach Katsumoto. Soon, Algron learns from Graham that Amura has passed a law against the samurai and witnesses how the soldiers surround Nabutada. Algron persuades the young man not to resist, and the soldiers cut off his hair, a gesture signifying loss of honor. Soon Katsumoto is invited to a meeting of ministers, where Amura declares that under the new law, samurai are prohibited from carrying weapons. The rebel leader refuses to obey, and Amura orders his arrest. Meanwhile, Bagley visits Algron, gives him money for the service, and informs him that Katsumoto will not survive this night. Cupid will take care of it. This news forces the American to act, but along the way, Algron falls into a trap. Amura's men were ordered to kill the captain if he tried to meet Katsumoto. However, the months spent among the soldiers were not in vain, and the lessons of Yuji left to deep a mark on the memory of a seasoned soldier. Algron deals with the murderers, and with the help of Graham, who managed to deceive illiterate soldiers, saying that the US president himself came to see the prisoner, gets to Katsumoto. The American persuades him not to give up and continue the fight, especially since his associates are already here, and are ready to release the master. But it is not possible to slip away unnoticed. Despite the suddenness of the attack, Nabutada is wounded. He asks his father to let him stay and face death as a warrior. Gathering his last strength, the guy rushes at the enemy and fights to the end, dying like a true samurai with a sword in his hands. Soon the squad returns to the village. In a conversation with such a person, Algron declares that he will also fight on Katsumoto's side, because the emperor's army seeks to destroy what he has fallen in love with. Katsumoto has no doubt that the enemy will outnumber them, and defeat is inevitable. The captain shares this opinion, but believes that they will have a chance if they let the enemy get within sword distance. Intelligence reports that about 2,000 soldiers have been sent to suppress the uprising, while Katsumoto has only 500 soldiers. Knowing the tactics of the Imperial Army, Nathan takes part in the preparation for the general battle and shares with the samurai knowledge that will help deprive the enemy of an advantage in firepower. The day of battle comes, and Taka asks Algron to honor her by wearing the armor of her late husband. Dressed in them, Nathan receives a sword with an inscription from Katsumoto. "I belong to a warrior in whom the old way merges with the new." They leave the village and the two armies come face to face. The first artillery barrage causes panic in the ranks of the rebels, and they begin to retreat randomly. Inspired by the success, Omura, despite the objection, Bagley orders to finish off the retreating. But it turns out to be a trap. The samurai lure the enemy to the grass soaked in resin and set it on fire, making a real hell for the soldiers of the army. Having separated the advanced detachments from the main part and weakened the offensive with volleys of bows, the warriors rush to the attack. As Algron predicted, samurai with swords are more effective in close combat than soldiers with bayonets. In a short and fierce battle, where the samurai show superhuman bravery, both sides suffer heavy losses. The battlefield turns into a bloody mess. The air is filled with smoke and the smell of blood. But even though the samurai manage to repel the first wave, Katsumoto realizes that they can no longer defeat the reserve forces of the Imperial Army. The surviving handful of rebels decides to show an example of bravery and humility with fate. Lining up in front of the Imperial Army, they demonstrate their willingness to die in battle because they cannot accept the shame of defeat. Katsumoto gives the order to attack, and the riders rush at full speed towards the first line of defense. Firearms do their job, destroying Katsumoto's best warriors, and Algron finds Bagley. The remnants of the rebels break through the defenses, but when the machine guns enter the battle, the last riders fall into the crossfire and complete their life path. Algron does not want Katsumoto to die, but the rebel leader asks to be allowed to die in order to preserve his honor. Exhausted, he barely gets on his knees and asks the captain to help him pass away with dignity. This gesture, full of greatness and fearlessness in the face of death, reminds the soldiers that they have destroyed the last vestige of ancient traditions. Filled with respect for Katsumoto's courage, the soldiers posthumously bow before the fallen rebel leader. Shortly after the battle, Algron goes to the emperor's reception and asks him to take Katsumoto's sword, who wanted the samurai's power to always accompany the ruler. Touched by this gesture, the emperor orders to renegotiate the terms of the treaty with America, and the indignant Cupid offers to commit a chain. But he is not a warrior, and he can only accept the will of the monarch. In his notes, Mr. Graham notes that after this meeting, Captain Nathan Algron disappeared. Some believed that he died of wounds, others that he returned to his homeland. But Graham believed that Algron had managed to find his share of peace, the one that we are all looking for, but very few find. The film The Last Samurai is not just a historical epic about battles and changes, but a deep story about inner search and transformation. The main character, having passed through trials, learns to understand and accept another world, gaining a true sense of honor and peace. This story reminds us that even in the most difficult circumstances, you can find harmony and stay true to your principles.